Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I haven't done a video for ages and ages, probably since I would have said I last did one in March, a proper video. I've done a few YouTube short ones, but I've had GCSEs, I've been busier than ever. I sold about 70-ish nukes per year, so I've had a lot going on. I did the honey as well, and it's just been a really busy year. But I'm going to try and upload videos more regularly, because I know a lot of content about the bees. I just need to turn it into a video and spend a few hours editing it is the difficult part. But anyway, today I thought I'd talk to you about why in the later parts of the year I feed pre-bought syrup as opposed to your own syrup that you can make. Now I thought I'd talk overall a bit about my feeding regime and how I feed them. Now, because I do lots of nukes, and if anybody doesn't know what nukes are, nukes is short for nucleus, and it means starter hive of bees. So I'm essentially breeding bees, and the bees need lots of sugar syrup to mimic the nectar to get them to expand faster. So I basically feed them sugar syrup that I make myself, but I think I'm going to move away from that because it takes too long and it's a bit too difficult to do, and you never get the quantities quite right, and you can get mold in the syrup as well, which is what I've been having recently. But at the start of the year it's alright to feed your own sugar syrup. I think that's perfectly acceptable. All through the spring and summer you can feed your own syrup, and that's just where you sort of go online, you get some granulated sugar and you get some warm water and you sort of mix it up to roughly the right quantity, which is 1:1. And that's for the bees in the spring. Now 1:1 is essentially, I think it's one pint of water to 1 pound of sugar, I think. I might be wrong, correct me if I am, put it in the comments, but I think it is. I just guess roughly, I don't really have time to go weighing it out. But as I said, I'm just going to buy a big IBC of sugar syrup and just fill up drums from it. The problem I had as well is that you've got to make sure your syrup drums are really sterile. Now mine had slight mold on the inside, and it meant that the sugar syrup, which would have been clean because it was clean water and the sugar was clean, it then got mold in it and it started fermenting essentially, and also you'd get black mold in the feeders, which wasn't ideal, and it takes ages to clean them as well. But I've done all that now, so for next year I think I am going to mainly just buy sugar syrup and dilute it down a bit to get to 1:1, also get more syrup for your money's worth, I guess. But the main point of this video is to say why I feed pre-bought syrup later in the year. Now pre-bought syrup like this, I've got a drum of it here, I haven't got much left, but this is pre-bought syrup, and this is just quite expensive actually, but this is a 10-litre drum, which is quite easy because I don't want anything too heavy. I know they do like 30-kilo drums, which is way too heavy, especially if you're lifting that up and trying to tip it, it's too difficult. This one is from Zucan, I think, and it's just got added vitamins and amino acids. That's why the colour is slightly yellowy rather than white, because you can get sort of clear syrup, and I was getting some of that. But point being, I use this because it's far easier later in the year. You don't have to spend time mixing it up, and also later in the year you'll be feeding 2:1 syrup, which is two parts sugar and 1 part water, so you got more sugar in there and less water. And the reason that is it makes it easier for the bees to process it faster, because bees naturally remove bees naturally remove a lot of the water content from syrup, and that's fine to do in the spring when the temperatures are higher, whereas when it's colder it's much easier to actually just feed thicker syrup with less water content in it and more sugar. It just makes it easier to store. They can store it straight away, and as I say, this has added vitamins and whatever else in it, so I was using that as well. Now the main reason that I have worked out that you need to feed pre-bought syrup later in the year is when you make your own syrup, unless you're really good at it, which I'm not, you're always going to end up with a certain amount of mold, black mold type stuff in the drum or in the feeder or in the actual sugar syrup floating around in itself. Now that's a problem, because when the bees store that, it can go mouldy in the frames because it's got the mould in it, and as the bees contract over the winter and the cluster gets smaller, some bees die off perhaps, the bees are no longer covering it and the mould just sort of grows. And yeah, so that was the problem I was having, and they didn't actually have time to process it. My sugar syrup, which I mixed, they didn't have enough time later in the year to process it down and cap it off. They just stored it open, and it resulted in whole frames going mouldy. So my advice is to feed your own syrup up to the point that you can, which is sort of late summer, and then switch on to pre-bought syrup. It's far easier as well. Just for me, the reason I was hesitant before is that I had quite a lot of hives and it seems quite a lot of money for some sugar syrup, but I found out basically that, you know, what you invest in the bees later in the year pays you back when the bees come into the spring. So this has added whatever it has, amino acids and whatever else, which is good for them. And you know, they've got fondant on there as an insurance policy. I've now finished feeding because it's got too cold. Bees can only drink syrup and process it, I think, when the temperature is above 12 degrees Celsius. So really there's not a very high threshold for it, but that's that. So these bees are getting really busy already. They probably don't like me standing here, but you should see the clusters right now, massive clusters. And what I found when I fed my own pre-mixed syrup that I made in the shed is that they didn't come into spring as well as when I bought the syrup. I actually did a comparison, so I did a few hives on pre-bought syrup, so like this drum here, and I did some on the syrup I had made, and the ones on the syrup that had been pre-bought actually did much better overall, on average, in terms of coming into the spring. So I found that quite interesting, my own little science experiment. So in summary, what you want to be doing is you want to be feeding 1:1 sugar syrup for expansion in the spring, and then moving on to a thicker syrup in the autumn and early winter time. So that's my advice, and I actually have found it's worked pretty well, and yeah. So that was just a quick little video explaining really why I was feeding pre-bought syrup. I know a lot of people mix their own, but whenever I mixed it, I ran into problems with it, which wasn't great for the bees and wasn't great for my peace of mind regarding the bees surviving the winter as well. So that's about it. Obviously right now there's nothing really, I can't inspect the bees, and there's not really much going on, so it has to be a talking video unfortunately, but I hope you picked up some useful tips, and I'll see you next time.